If one of the most structured institutions in the world had to be warned about leadership diseases at the highest level, what does that say about churches with no systems, no oversight, and no accountability? Today, we are going to examine 5 more leadership diseases that could silently damage ministries. Welcome to Christian Leadership Insight. Let's recap. The 15 diseases of leadership is based on a speech that the late Pope Francis delivered to the Roman Curia. The Roman Curia, remember, is made up of the cardinals and senior leaders of the Roman Catholic Church. And this is what he said. Just to recap, he says, leaders are susceptible to all sorts of debilitating maladies, including arrogance, intolerance, myopia, and pettiness. If these issues are not addressed, they become a source of weakness for the organization. To have a healthy church, we need healthy leaders. So this is the Pope. This is what he said. We have already talked about 5 diseases in part 1, so we're going to take a look again at another 5. Let's start with the disease of rivalry and vainglory. This is a disease of that is a feeling, an exaggerated feeling of oneself. As if one is crowned, you have this image of superiority, you're feeling the most important person, and that is the image you see when you look at yourself. Leaders are treated like celebrities. They are not shepherds. When you see real shepherds, pastors and leaders that are shepherds, you can tell the difference. These guys are celebrities. There is no succession planning because nobody is good enough. They don't think about succession planning. There's just one personality and everybody looks up to that person. So there's no succession planning until something happens and then they start looking for somebody who can just fit in. And that person probably has not been prepared for that leadership role. The leader prioritizes their status. Their status is more important than service. So therefore, leadership teams tend to revolve around this person and there's loyalty. That is the main issue there. There is no form of accountability. How do we solve this? What is the solution? Just be collegial and be humble. In the words of Paul, he says, do nothing for selfishness or conceit, but in humility count others better than yourself. 2 Philippians 3. I know this is a hard one, but humility is key in Christian leadership. The disease of hoarding. When the leader tries to accumulate, it doesn't matter how they get it, they focus on just acquiring. Why do they do this? It's about feeling secure. And then the Pope says that we should remember that our funeral clothes do not have pockets, that all these things that we acquire, we are not going to take them along. So that's what the Pope is saying. Just remember that as you're accumulating, taking advantage of your position as a leader, taking advantage of people, and accumulating all of this wealth, and you're hoarding all of this stuff, you can't take it along with you. That is the Pope's word. They cling to power, resources, and information. They will not share information. Power gives them, they feel good about power. And they attach again to status symbols. For example, a church will prioritize the assets and wealth. So the mission of the church now becomes subservient to that. Ministry leader, for example, will refuse to share budgets. They don't talk about finance. So people can keep giving, it doesn't matter. But the budget is not for anybody to see. People can give for all sorts of funding for buildings and all of that for 5-10 years, but nobody talks about it. You don't ask questions, and then they are not under obligation to share any information with anyone. What is the solution? Just be generous, and accountability also comes in there. The disease of inner circle or closed circle. Now, how does this play out? There's a tendency to form a clique. Even within the leadership team, you have subgroups. And when this happens, it threatens harmony. The core values and vision and objectives that the church represents begins to disintegrate because you have people doing things in little groups that they are invited in. Somebody has invited them, maybe the senior leader, but it's not connecting to everybody else the way they should. only a small number of this group will be responsible for decision making, and this can lead to favoritism in ministry, and we know that this actually exists. What happens to this disease is that it starts small. So you think you're well, bring you into the clique or the circle, and if you're not careful, you will be overused. The dependence on you becomes so much that they begin to you feel overused and exploited. What is the solution? Be inclusive. It's a church. There's no difference. Treat people equally. Avoid developing informal subgroups. The disease of indifference to others. This is when leaders become immersed in their own world and their own issues. They completely ignore whatever is happening to their members. These are pastors who have and leaders who have followers, but they are completely disconnected, as the images there show, the two photos, disconnected. But people around really do not matter, but yet you're leading these people in a church. You lose a member of your church, you have nobody tells you, nobody knows, it's business as usual. People are used just for performance. You use them, exploit them to achieve their own objective, not for the good of all, but for their own objective. So a pastor, for example, might focus on just preaching, and they ignore everything else happening around. So there's a lot of disconnection there. Solution: be sensitive to the thoughts, feelings, and attitude of other people. Again, coordinate with others and be a team player. It's also important as well to encourage fellowship and teamwork. The disease of gossiping, grumbling, and backbiting. It says leaders engage in harmful talk about others. It's strange, isn't it, that leaders in the church spend time, some of them, not all of them, but they do gossip from time to time. They lack confidence to address issues. The courage is not there to talk about something. So what happens is that they talk about the person behind. Prayer requests. People have told you some confidential issues. Some of them have written it in their prayer request. The content of that prayer request now becomes a subject for gossip. Don't look at me like that. This happens in churches. It happens. So private criticisms rather than confrontation. So team members complain about decisions privately. They can't talk about it. So even when they're not happy, they can't even talk about it. They can't discuss with the leader. So you have the teams gossiping about the leader, and then you have the leaders themselves gossiping within themselves. So these things happen. These are real issues. Pope Francis says he warns us about giving in to the terrorism of gossip. Now, what is the solution? It says, have courage to speak directly. Ensure misunderstandings are cleared up quickly, and encourage transparency and psychological safety. What is that psychological safety? Create an environment where people feel comfortable to talk about issues of concern without getting into trouble, without being punished. Reflection points. Now let's remember here that the Pope was not talking to critics. The Pope was actually addressing senior leaders in the church. That's exactly what he was doing. So he wasn't talking to outsiders. He was talking to senior leaders in the church. If we just pause for a moment and ask ourselves the question that if one of the strongest institutions in the world needed this kind of warning, what happens in privately owned churches where there's just one personality? They don't have any process, they have no systems. Can you imagine the types of diseases, even more than what we've talked about, that will exist in such environments? These leadership diseases don't begin publicly. They don't begin publicly, they begin privately. And if left untreated, as the Pope said, it spreads because as a leader, you are a mirror. People are seeing what you're doing and they will emulate it. That becomes the culture and the way things are done. The 5 leadership diseases that we've talked about in this video, they're not just theory. You'll find them, they exist in different churches around. Going forward, we need to shift from that culture and mindset of know it all. And we start to think about how we can learn, how do we improve leadership? It's time to shift. It's time to admit that there are gaps. There are gaps in our knowledge. There are gaps in our ability. There are gaps in our behaviors. Leadership behavior, there are gaps. So even if you've been leading for decades, it's still okay to raise your hands up and say, you know what? There are some things I need to learn. You can push yourself to learn more. How do you do it? By raising the lead. That is what John Maxwell calls the law of the lead. Push the lead up, come out of your comfort zone and learn more about leadership. So remember, to have a healthy church, we need healthy leaders. If this video challenged you, please share with a leader. It's a very uncomfortable topic, but we need to keep the conversation going. We need to talk about it because these problems actually do exist. A healthy church is not going to happen by accident. We have to be intentional, and that's where the training and development of leaders is crucial. We have to invest, we have to talk about it. I want to take this opportunity to thank those of you who have subscribed to the channel. And if you haven't yet, please do so that you can get more videos like this on Christian leadership. Please feel free to drop your comments and your suggestions as well. Think about the diseases we talked about, the topic, the themes we've discussed in this video and the previous ones. And which of these areas do you think is of a major concern to you as an individual? Please like and share the video. Thanks for watching.